All right, everybody. We just wanted to kind of do this RP 101. It can be a good refresher for anyone that's new to RPing in general. It can be a good refresher for anyone who's been RPing for a while and just wants to kind of get an idea or maybe some fresh takes on how to do it, what you should be doing, what you should be thinking about. Before we actually get into the scene, we wanted to kind of go over some RP basics, RP 101 stuff. Talk a little bit about how things work, what you should be thinking about, what you should be doing. And I think that the number one piece of advice that we can give to really, like, even if you've RP'd a little bit and you kind of want to take it to the next level, is make sure you're describing everything that's happening. When I'm talking right now, I'm using my hands a bit, I'm making facial gestures, I may have an accent, I may have, maybe I've been drinking, I have a bit of a slur, or I could be sweaty because I'm lying. These are all things that in a person-to-person situation you would see, but because of the game, it's not necessarily happening. And something else to keep in mind too is just because your character model is doing something in game doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it. Stuff gets screwed up, right? We accidentally emote or we get out of a chair when we don't mean to. So make sure that if you do something or if you even enter a scene, you say that, Jaina, can you go stand on the other side if you want to hang out here? Thank you. Yeah, just leave this area alone so the recording's good. Um, if you're entering a scene, just because your character model enters the scene doesn't mean that you necessarily have. You need to make sure that you announce it through an RPS kind of way. Is Alex any other like RP 101 things that you think would be really good to cover?
There are a ton. And this is not geared to insult anybody's intelligence. Almost everybody I've met here and played with here has a very good foundation. They really know what they're doing. But like we were talking about earlier, everybody could use a refresher, and somebody may pick up a key or a tip or a point that they haven't had before or haven't heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things like staying in character, IC and OOC, in character and out of character. What your character has knowledge of is not necessarily the same as what you as the player have knowledge of, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this character has been doing this, that, and the other thing, but my character Zalax has no idea. Therefore, I have to keep that knowledge separate,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't act on that knowledge or speak on that knowledge because the character doesn't know.
Yep.
That's a big one. I mean, that's a big one with people, is keeping those two things separate.
Yep. Exactly. And then also keep in mind this is something that can happen a lot of times. When you meet a new character, introduce yourself. Even if they know you because they've run dungeons with you and they've talked to you or they've helped you out with some stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean that your characters have met. So you can't just walk in and be like, "Hey, Oig, how's it going?" Because I always be like, "I don't know who the hell you are, man. Like I've never met you before in my life."
Right,
Um,
right.
if it's the first time meeting in characters, just make sure you introduce yourself and be descriptive. But yeah, you're exactly right. Don't metagame. Don't use out of character knowledge or knowledge your character wouldn't have, or that you haven't established that they would have. Maybe there is a good reason they would know something. Something I've kind of anyone who's role played with Oig a little bit and gotten to know his character knows that this concept that he has, instead of a big sword, many needles throughout the land. So sometimes he's able to get little tidbits of information from stuff. But I've established in character that there's a way for me to sometimes hear rumors. Um, Now I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
abuse that where I'm like I know everything about you and whatever happened to you. But like if there are happenings on and you haven't been very secretive about it, I may have heard something and I'll bring it into character. And of course, like anything else, consent is first. So if you're like, hey, that's something I really wouldn't want your character knowing, I'll roll it back. I'll say don't worry about it, and we can redo the role play. Um, which is something else to keep in mind, right? If you um, ever get uncomfortable with the role play, if you ever if there's ever something that you don't really like that's going on, or even if you just make a mistake, right? We all make mistakes speaking. Um, Jenny asking, so would I have to introduce myself to you every time I come across you? No, not every time, just the first time. The first time your characters meet, make sure that you introduce yourself to that person. Um, but if you make a mistake while you're role playing, or it kind of goes in a direction you don't want your character to go, you can tell the person that and be like, "Hey, I really don't like the way this went. Can we kind of back it up to here? Can we talk about this instead?" If you feel like you made a mistake or did something that was a little bit out of character, most people will be understanding about that kind of stuff.
Since you touched on consent, I'd like
Mm-hmm.
to kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Everybody has their limits, And some of those things are touched on in the consent forms, some of them aren't. And things that will come up in game that aren't necessarily thought of whenever you filled out your form. You can always whisper to someone and talk about something out of character before it happens, such as, hey, say it's you and I. It's like, are you okay if we get into a physical altercation and
Yeah.
fight it out? Are you okay if I like knock your character out? And you're like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Then we can switch back to the role play and have that happen instead of trying to force something on you. And then you're like, whoa, dude, I don't want to do that. And you always have the right to fade to black. And if you're uncomfortable with something that's happening, but you still want that role play to happen, you can FTP or FTB and fade to black and just, that's it. The scene is over. But no, consent is huge, and no one can force you to do anything, whatsoever.
Yeah, and absolutely something else to keep in mind too is that if there's a fun little RP, like many of us have run into, like Plague It, for example, and his motley crew with Brokel and Hawks and now Bartholomew, and they all do these crazy, goofy things. It's just fun. It's fine to talk about that. That's not that big a deal. However, if there is RP can get very real sometimes. I know myself, especially playing D&D a lot. I've gotten into like conversations in character that have become very real for me personally, and it was a very real thing. So especially if it's a very intense scene, it's something that it seems a bit personal. If you want to share that information with someone or you want to tell people about it, make sure you get the other person's permission first, because it may be something, if they were working out some personal stuff during that RP or it got a little real for them, that may not be something they're comfortable with other people knowing. So just whether it's ERP or RP, just make sure that if you're going to share that information with someone, the other person is cool with you sharing it. And if you ever feel like someone went against your consent, if you ever feel like someone maybe violated or maybe crossed the line during RP or ERP, please make sure you bring it up to either Katerina or myself, and we'll make sure we handle the situation. Other than that, I don't know any other like RP 101 stuff, unless you have anything else that you want to touch on, Alex.
Two that I think are kind of important. One are thought posts. It's a very, very, very tricky thing to include thoughts in your post, because just like in real life, I can't read your mind. I don't know what you're thinking. So if I come up to Oeg and say, greetings, how are you doing this day? But Zalax thinks he's an asshole. Well, why would I post that? Because Oeg cannot read my thoughts. Now, if Zalax looks at Oeg with a scowl of disgust, spits on the ground, and says, yeah, hi, what are you doing? Then you're implying, you're giving visual clues through the writing of how that character is feeling. But yeah, thoughts really should never be included in role play. Your character's thoughts are just that. They're thoughts.
Yep. Yeah, just make sure that like Zach said, that's perfect, right? Just describe what your character is doing. That would give off an obvious thing. We've all ended up having to talk to someone we didn't want to talk to, or deal with someone we didn't want to have to, and it becomes pretty obvious from our face. So just say that your character is doing those kinds of things.
The other two thing, post order. Posting order it can get pretty critical, especially in larger groups. Now, everyone, think of it like a board game. Everybody has a turn, and say there's 4 of us in the room. One person posts, and then the next person, and then the next, and the next, and it goes back around, thus round. Now, if it's a big group, like say a tavern, a bathhouse, a brothel, something like that, there may be multiple small groups split up. They have their own little round. Like if you and I are back here in the back speaking, you and I will take turns with each other and basically ignore what's going on over on the other side of the room. They have their own order. But in a larger setting, it can get very chaotic. And by the time I'm done typing my response, 5 other things have happened, and I have to go back and redo it. Lastly, the thing I can think of is style. Everyone has their own writing style. Everybody has their own voice. Some people will like yours, some people won't, and that's totally okay. There are people that may role play with me and say, I just don't like the way the guy role plays. And I respect that. That's fine. Not everybody's going to like your particular style.
Hmm.
But I think with a little bit of a foundation and some basic ground rules that everybody's on the same page, it makes things easier and it kind of facilitates everybody having a good time.
Yep, absolutely. Some things, just thought about this as far as RP 101 goes, and you guys can't see it necessarily on right now that we're talking, but on the recording you'll be able to see it. There are some ways that you communicate in RP, and one of the things I would say is patience, because we're doing, for example, /me. So I'll just, for example, type in looks across the room, but you can see it doesn't say Oig is typing. So sometimes you're waiting on someone to respond and they may be saying a lot, or maybe there's someone who doesn't type very fast. Just have
Right.
patience and wait for them to respond, and it'll pop up like that, where it's in that in character kind of thing. You can still, if you want to, if you're saying something, you can just type regular, just say hello, Zalex. Um, but while that /me is on, people can't see that you're typing, so just make sure that you have patience. If you have been sitting there for 4 or 5 minutes and you're wondering, like, what are you waiting for? Is something going on? Something you can do is, like, the out of characters, you use parentheses,
Hmm.
and you can just say something like, hey, Zalex, are you AFK? And that'll work. Um, if you're not and you're just typing a huge response and you're like, I just need a second, while you're
Hmm.
typing within this chat window, oops, while you're typing within this chat window, you can actually copy and paste, so you can cut that, give them a quick response like, yeah, I'm almost done. It's just a lot, and then put it back, paste it back in, and continue on with what you were writing.
You're gonna have to teach. You're gonna have to teach me about the copy paste then, because I don't know that.
Basically, like you're in that text box window, you can highlight it.
Oh, I
Like you
see.
can
I
you
see.
can use your cursor, drag it across, and then Control X to cut, and then Control V to
Hmm.
paste it back in.
But not the
Um,
actual chat.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah. Unfortunately, you can't copy the actual chat, which would be super convenient, but you can't do that for some reason because life is unfair. Um,
Yes.
um, I think that's pretty good for the basics, as far as like all that kind of stuff.
I have a question. I haven't asked, and I don't even know if it's been discussed yet.
Yeah.
But since this is an erotic roleplay server, um, the f- the deal with local and private messaging. For instance, if I'm
Hmm.
here in the tavern and a girl and I are having an erotic roleplay here, but we're typing in local,
Hmm.
it kind of insinuates that we are welcome for someone to join in. So if you were to walk in and you see all this happening in local, you are obviously allowed to react with it. But if it's in private, then no one would see that message.
Yep.
Is that something that needs to be kind of ruled on, or?
Yeah, I mean, basically what it comes down to is number one, if you are doing ERP, unless for some reason you want to do it, if you want to do it publicly and you want it to be public, I would type in the local. That doesn't mean that someone else is necessarily invited into that ERP as well,
Right.
though they are welcome to react to it. Um, Oftentimes, the best way to do that is just send an out of character message with those parentheses,
Hmm.
saying, um, "Hey, should I leave, or do you want me to react, or is there a way that I could join in on this?" Um, and they'll give you the feedback, and then just respect whatever that feedback is, because they may be doing it in a public place so that they can get a rise out of people, get a reaction,
Hmm.
whether it's something as simple as like, "Oh shit, sorry about that, I'm out of here," or it's something more along the lines of like, "Well, that looks like fun. Can I hop in?" Um, that may be what they're going for. However, if
Hmm.
I will say, if you want it to be private, don't ERP in an RP spot. Do it in someone's house.
Hmm.
Do it in your whisper chat. Don't do it on local. If not, you are inviting people to either just watch, like take observation of the ERP and watch you, or react and enter the scene.
Sounds good.
Um, so that all being said, I think the other thing that we should talk about before we actually get into the scene itself is character creation. A lot of people kind of have a good idea what they want to do with their characters. Some aren't quite sure yet. Some are about halfway there, but they're still working on it. So I thought me and Alex could kind of go over general character creation, like what can help you get started, um, and then kind of go into how I created Oig and again how he created Xalax. Um, so at least for me, when it comes to just general ideas for character creation, the best way to start if you've never done it before, or even if you have done it before but you want something fresh, is honestly take in content. You know, watch movies, watch TV, read books, read comics, whatever it is that you enjoy, and take some inspiration from someone. It doesn't need to be a carbon copy of that character. It doesn't need to be exactly who that person is, but you can get an idea of like personality, how they would react to things. We've all, got favorite characters on TV shows or in movies or in books, where we could almost say with certainty how they would react to anything, any kind of situation. You can draw from that, or honestly, even draw from yourself. There's nothing wrong. I've played a lot of D&D, and I was joking with Alex earlier. The joke always is that everyone's first character in D&D is themselves, but a little bit cooler. It's exactly me personality-wise. However, I'm also a badass knight or whatever it is. How you whisper in game, Jaina? The way that you do it is you do /whisper, and then you put the person's name. And then when you press enter, it will open up a chat window to just that person that you can talk to. As far as like basics of character creations, Alex, anything else I should maybe cover with that?
I always start at first with just a stereotype. Like Xalax, for example, I had no idea what kind of character I wanted to make here. So I just started with a basic backstory. The typical, caravan mercenary guard, blah, blah, blah. And your character develops from that. I mean, you lay down this foundation, and as you're playing and as you're role playing specifically, you're going to add layer after layer after layer, and they start to develop their own personality. The only reason he's a slaver is because I got in here and I started bonking thralls over the head. It was fun, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool."
Yeah.
And thus a slaver is born, and then through role play, he develops everything else. It takes a while. It takes me a while to get a character developed. But once you do, you'll know it. It clicks, and it's like suddenly you're talking like your character. You're making choices based on what your character would do, not what you would do. I mean, I'm not a slaver in real life, and I would never do half the stuff that
What?
does.
Alex, you're not a slaver in real life?
I cannot confirm or deny that. You make those choices based on what your character would do, and they really come alive. And when people have experienced that, that's kind of like what you're shooting for in role play, and you lose yourself in your character.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I would add to that too is that one of the things I always like to do with characters, and to talk a bit about like how I created Oig, is I always like to put at least a little bit of myself so the character becomes more real for me, and I can put myself in their shoes a little bit easier. So for example, Oig's backstory was posted in the Discord. Basically, he grew up on the streets with nothing, realized that there was something entrepreneurial he could do, and built his own drug empire of lotus potions, and had this idea of kind of coming from nothing essentially and building an empire through sheer grit and determination and work. And now in my own personal life, I'm a first generation American. My mother came from Ecuador. We didn't necessarily grow up poor, like I never lived on the streets or anything like that. But when I grew up, first 5 years of my life, I lived in my grandmother's attic, because that's where me and my mom were first few years without a dad. So I did have a great mom, and eventually my stepdad came along and he was great. But I got to watch my mom, who was a first generation. She came to America. She was not born in America. I watched her work hard, get her bachelor's degree, work hard to get her master's degree, get a really good job, set herself up well, and set up our whole family so that I could in turn do the same thing. And I learned hard work from her, and was able to build up myself so that things went well for me too. So the idea of coming from the concept of where my mother came from, which was coming to America where they had nothing, and building something out of that into something more successful, more generational, is kind of where the infusion for Oig came along with the fact that people a lot of times tell me I look like a Cuban drug dealer, and so I was like, fuck it, we're putting that in game, and I'm gonna play around with that.
Sure. some stuff pops in. Giving role play is definitely a give and take. You know, like Oeg is not here for my entertainment, and I'm not here for his entertainment. So during the role play and during the conversations and thing, it's giving your partner an opportunity to do something or react, giving them choices, and then in turn they give you different choices, and you can really get a good role play rolling that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. A good example of that may be, maybe the conversation's getting a bit intense. We're arguing about something, if negotiations over something, and Zalex takes his dagger and puts them out on the table. That's a signal for Oig to be like, this guy may be ready to fight me, and I need to be prepared too. So maybe Oig will also draw his weapon, or at least at the very least show that he has one on him.
Right. And I'm not all powerful. It's not like, I can't just take a dagger and stab you. Yep. I can attempt to stab you, thus giving you the opportunity to get cut, to get wounded, to dodge out of the way, to whatever. Again, it's a give and take.
Yeah. So it's always that, that's exactly right. It's the idea of like, put something out there that the other person's going to react to. That is something I was going to touch on with thoughts too, is that if you do want to help someone understand your character a little bit better so they know how to kind of signal things to you, then one of the things you can do is either give your thoughts or even afterwards out of character be like, man, so-and-so was terrified during that. If you feel like you didn't do a good job explaining kind of what they were looking like in your head they were like knees trembling, sweating hard, not trying to be tough but not really portraying that in a physical way, that's something you can always say out of character too, so that the person who you were in the scene with gets a better idea of what actually occurred, because like I said, it is hard sometimes to know exactly what's happening if you're not describing it very well.
It is. And keep practicing. I mean, every time you do it you'll get a little bit better.
Yeah.
At least I hope I do.
Yeah, I think we all do. I mean, the best thing that you can do is practice, especially with people who are really good at RP or you feel are really good and are really descriptive, because getting to see what they say and what they do and kind of how the thought process is will help your character as you start to see them say things like he wiped the sweat from his brow as he responded, or his usual smile turned into a cold hard face as he said these next words. It gives you an idea of like things that you can describe to help signal to the other person how your character's feeling, how they're reacting, how they're taking things. So I think with that, I think we're ready to get into this RP if you're ready, Alex.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. So just so you guys know what the prompt is that kind of started this is out of character, me and Alex talked already, and basically I sent him an invitation to the tavern. I said, come meet me at the tavern, there's something I want to discuss with you. So he's going to enter with me already here, and I think Zal, you can kind of kick it off just entering into the scene.
Sure.
And then we'll sit down and have a conversation and kind of talk through things. I will say, at least personally, something that's a shortcoming of mine, I didn't realize was such a big shortcoming until I saw some other people who were really good with it, is the emotes. Some people are great at being like, he bowed and then waved his hand and they can get all the stuff done perfectly. I'm not great at that. I'm going to try to do my best, as I always do. But typically I've got the bow and I've got the sitting down, and that's about all I got when it comes to emotes.
The animation. Oh my gosh. No, I have not even started to play with those yet.
Yeah. Some people on the server are amazing at it. Like,
yes.
I can't even, like, they must have hotkeys for every animation that's in the goddamn game or something.
Yep.
But
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
So normally I would do this like at the door. Normally I would arrive at the tavern, whether I'm walking here, warping here, whatever, and kind of stand outside to see if there's any other conversations going on, because I'm not going to just burst in the door and start typing. Once I see a lull or it's like my turn, I would enter and do something like this. And yeah, it might take me a while. I'm a slow typer.
All right, let's go ahead and kick off the scene then, and I'll have Oig sitting here waiting for you with his feet up on the table, and you can enter.
You can talk while I'm typing.
Yeah, there's sometimes, you know, well, like I said, one of the things that you want to remember is just patience. You know, sometimes someone is typing stuff to you and waiting, so just give them a couple minutes. You know, it may be something long, it may be that they started to type and then I know personally I've got a couple of dogs that like to come up and just harass me for attention, so sometimes I got to run to the door real quick and let them out. So just be patient while they type and they're saying things. But I think that the audio is good on this. Hopefully the music isn't too loud. And of course, afterwards, if you watch this and you have any questions, you're wondering anything, or there was something that we didn't touch on that maybe you'd like to discuss, or even if you just have a character idea that you want to hash out with somebody, feel free to, you know, come to me, come to Exiles, come to Katerina, and talk it out with us, and we'll give you some ideas. We'll help you with backstories, maybe some other things that we've heard in the past. We can kind of go through. No, it's fine with the music, I think. I double checked the recording and it's good. As far as audio goes, you can still hear us over it. I've got my in-game volume down pretty low to make sure that we compensate for that. But and keep in mind too that you don't always have to set something up out of character. If you want to just go and RP with somebody, you know where they are, especially if someone's at an RP spot. They're there because they want to RP, so just show up and start doing things. You don't have to necessarily out of character message them. It's more if there's something specific you want to do. So for example, in this case, I have a business idea that I want to pitch to Alex. And so out of character, I messaged him and said, hey, here's the scene I'm kind of thinking. Are you open to that? And he told me yes. So we both came to the tavern to RP it out. But don't be afraid to, you know, if you're in an RP spot or you're, you know, in the area of someone's house and you want to walk up and RP with them, go ahead and do it. They may be busy, so they may, you know, do that little parentheses thing and just say, hey, I'm really sorry, but I can't RP right now. I'm in the middle of doing this or that. I've got to log off in 2 minutes. Just make sure you be respectful of people, and I think everyone here is pretty good about if someone is uncomfortable with an RP or someone isn't necessarily in the mood for it right now, they're pretty good about going away. But always just be out there and trying to do stuff, and you know, if you want, you can start an RP and the other person will tell you, will either participate back or they'll tell you, hey, I'm doing things, I'll talk to you later though.
Well, I'm almost afraid. Does this count? I was assuming this was not a actual role play between us.
I mean, it cannot be. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's not, because he's being a little bit of a jerk.
Okay, perfect. What? Well, Alex isn't normally a jerk? He's kind of standoffish.
He's a sweet guy.
A hostile RP? Yeah, we can.
Well, I think this will answer that.
He come over him with gratitude. He's this there. The nod for Greg. He slowly walks to the area where he knows the tables are. Seeing Oig sitting at one of the tables, he grunts, okay, I got your summons. I hope this is good because I do not appreciate being summoned like a lapdog. Without waiting for an answer, he moves to the table and leans on the chair waiting. So, something that I'm going to do here is respond back.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move over.
Yeah.
So see, this is what I'm talking about, give and take. Yeah. Now I'm giving Oig a choice. How is he going to react? Is he going to be like apologetic, subservient? Is he going to get aggressive back? And this is allowing him to explore his character and kind of drive what happens next. And then I will react off of what he does, and back and forth. I mean, he might just say, dude, I'm so sorry. Here, have a bag of gold. You know, or he might say,
a bag of gold.
He might say, screw you, dude. You know, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. So Oig is generally like this idea of, you know, a drug lord where he's got this kind of feeling of he's very smiley and charming and like, you know, gives little winks and stuff like that, but there's always this kind of underlying feel of deviousness where it's like, can I really trust him? Does he really mean what he says? He's trying to give me too much, he's trying to be too nice to me.
And here with a maximum character count, sometimes it does get in the way. And
Yeah.
I one thing I have done is literally put, like CONT in parentheses at the end and just finished out the last little sentence or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can put little dots and just to say like, hey, I'm gonna still be typing after this. I just hit max character count.
Hmm.
Right. Responded. So something that you can do if you're better with emotes than I am, give them the little bow. Then I'm gonna sit back down and get one of my usual positions because these sitting emotes for most of the chairs in this game are awful. Something else too, in case you don't know, there are two emote menus. One is if you hold R, you can see the in-game emotes. And then because of Devious Desires, the mod that we have installed on here, you can also press Shift H for a bunch of different ones. One of the great things that they did add is they added context emotes. So if you're sitting down, it'll put all the sitting emotes all the way at the top.
Oh man, I've got to learn that.
Yeah. So you can see the way that Oig reacted to Alex, because of kind of the way his character is he sees that he comes in, he sees that he's kind of pissy at Oig, um, like I don't like what you did, and he just kind of laughs it off like no big deal. Come on, is that the way to talk to a friend, especially a friend that's here to make you money? Um, right away turning it back, and instead of being aggressive back necessarily, what his usual demeanor is I can charm my way back into this. I'm here to make him money, and I'm here to strike a business deal. Um, and so that's kind of his usual reaction. Now that doesn't mean necessarily that that's how he'll always react. Maybe
Right, right.
yeah, maybe if we have a interaction later on, and I think that Alex has been coming to my estate and stealing my workers, or that he's been cutting into my businesses somehow, I might have a very different reaction, and I'm not going to be smiley and charming. Um, but it's good to kind of establish a general um, feel for your character. Like Zalax is generally kind of this gruff guy. He's out here in the Highlands getting slaves, being tough. So if he ever has a moment where he gets kind of soft, that's like, ooh, that's a little different. Something's going on right now. He's having
Hmm.
his character's having a big reaction to this, just the same way. Whereas if Oig isn't smiley and laughing and grinning, something's going on, and there's something happening, and it's definitely something your character can take note of. Like, hey, you're not your usual self right now. Did something happen? Is something going on? Um, or it can be a signal to you of like, this character's almost always in a good mood, and I'm probably a little bit in trouble with them because of the way that they're acting. Oh, when you're out of water. Something else too that is a good note to make, because we have so many drink and food vendors and all that kind of jazz, is that when you say you're ordering a drink or when you say you're ordering food for someone, you can certainly go over to the bar and get it. But you don't have to. You can just say like, "Hey, I'm going to order you a drink. What do you want?" Or if someone's serving you can say, "Hey, bring me this," and they can walk off like they're going to get it. They don't actually have to bring you something back that you then pick up. You can do it if you so wish to, but by no means is it necessary, because it can kind of make the scenes longer or take out of the scenes if you don't want to do that. Awesome. And just in case anyone's not able to, is just listening to the audio of this, I am going to read out kind of what we said here. So that the way that Oig responded is, I said, Oig takes his feet off the table and stands up to give a deep bow to his now arrived guests. Coming back with a smile, mi amigo, is that how you greet a friend, especially a friend who's here with an idea to make you mucho dinero? Please sit, I'll order you a drink, compadre, he says, taking a seat back at the table. Zalex's response was, Zalex watches his eyes narrowed a bit. His scowl disappears in a bit and nods, looking to the table and seeing an ale there. He grunts and replies, unclasping the soaking wet fur cloak and tossing it in the other chair to try. He sits and takes the ale. Fair enough, you have been a friend thus far, and you have ale. He takes a swig, setting it down and looking across the table. You mentioned that coin was involved in profits to be made. Well, you have my attention. Uh, so obviously I've, now notices that mentioning a little bit of coin, saying, hey, I'm going to make you some money, this softens Alex up a bit. So at least from Oeg's perspective, the way he's feeling is that he's like, okay, I've charmed him a little bit. I'm kind of winning the day here a bit, and so I'm going to push it further and kind of pitch my idea here, and I think that he's going to be receptive to it.
Or so he thinks.
Or so he thinks, correct. Yeah, that's Oeg's perspective, not necessarily what's happening. So like, for example, here I'm going to be using the ... to kind of continue things, just because I've got a little bit more to type. I'm at 491 characters out of 512. Sometimes this isn't always the best. This works really well one-on-one. If it's a large group setting, really long run on things like this aren't very good, just because it can start to drown out the chat, or you can interrupt someone if you accidentally go out of round of order, and it's really hard to kind of get back into, because you got to change how you react. Okay, and that's the end of my thing. So it's a little bit long, but basically I say, Oig smiles at Alex's face, softening, and takes a drink with him. Mi amigo, I have many business ventures I attend to, and a new one has reared itself in my head, an arena. I've heard of far-off lands where they made prisoners and slaves fight to the death in order to place bets, gain favor, gain reputation, and most importantly, line the pockets of the owners with coin. I can build the arena, but I need something else. A champion, someone with an arsenal of slaves like you. And I put the ... in, and I put Oig continues. I've seen your camp growing and the hordes of slaves being carted in and out. I've seen legends from around the land disappear to end up for sale at your marketplace. I need you to be that champion, someone who can not only fight, but can also make sure the fights go the way they need to when it becomes necessary. He finishes as he raises an eyebrow on the corner of his lips, left taking another swig of ale. So a couple of things here is number one, um, obviously Oig has some knowledge of what's going on with Alex and what he's been doing. I've kind of established this previously by talking about my many needles and like my little eyes dotted across the land. So it would make sense that I had someone watching him after I met him and kind of knew what he was up to. Your character may also have knowledge because they've done business with Alex before, or you've been to his marketplace and you've seen some of the um, named thralls that he has for sale, or he's offered to you before, like if you ever need a good slave, let me know. You've kind of got an idea of what's going on. So I use some in character knowledge. So I wasn't say out of character because of what's been previously established. And then the other thing that I'm implying here is that I think that Alex is willing to be dirty for me, and that's what I was trying to say with the raised eyebrow and the curled lip. Like the fights need to go the way the fights go the way they need to when necessary. Like, if you know what I mean. Trying to communicate the whole if you know what I mean with my face through description of the character, because I do know from dealings with Alex and some of the trade that he's in, the pile of bodies that used to be in front of his place, he's not afraid to get his hands a little bit dirty for the right price. Um, so I already have this kind of pre-established knowledge that, number one, Alex has been growing in power, getting a lot of thralls, getting a lot of slaves, and getting really good slaves. So I know that he's got slaves that are strong enough to be, kind of my champion supplier. And then I also know that Alex doesn't mind getting his hands a bit dirty. So if I have, a friend or a business associate who needs to place a very large bet and make sure it goes the right way, um, I want to make sure that Alex is the kind of person that I can inform, like, hey, maybe this time you give your fighter this blade instead, and maybe it's a poison blade, maybe it's something that's a little bit stronger, something that's going to make the fight unfair, to make sure that the fight, while it appears to have been fair to everyone else, without closer inspection, it's without closer inspection to find out it's unfair. Which is something else really good too. There can be times where you want to sow seeds of dissent with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Where maybe we established this arena and people are fighting, and you see these two people fight, and maybe you know that so and so's slave is very strong, and you say that fight was over way too quickly. There's no way. I'm not saying that he should have won, but I'm saying that he went down way too easily. And this is the third time I've seen that, and I want to know what's going on. That's something that you can definitely keep an eye on and use. But like I said, you don't want to use out of character knowledge. For example, if we were to do this, and you heard me say that, you don't then just want to go in and then the first fight that happens be like, hey, you cheated. That's not, your character isn't that observant. More than likely, your character's not all powerful or all knowing. It could have gone either way. It would have to be a situation where you do know one character and their slave and how strong they are, and the other, or you see a slave winning all the time that shouldn't be, where you're like, this guy isn't a great fighter, he's not very strong, he's definitely slower than some of these other people that came up, but
Whoops.
I'll definitely do it. And perfect example, a quick mistake and it happens in character and didn't happen, like you emotes end or you get knocked out of emotes or whatever. So unless someone explicitly says, hey, this is what my character did, that's not really what their character did. So as Alex leans back in the chair, visibly relaxing, his eyes look upward at the lips pursed deep in thought. As his lips purse deep in thought. After a moment, he looks back to Oig and nods. You speak the truth. Ravenwolf is growing, and slaves both obscure and famous have passed through our gates. He pauses, chewing the inside of his cheek. Flesh is near worthless here and easily come by. It would be good to see this arena, and I can imagine the flow of coin coming from within. His head tilts as he takes up the ale again and takes a continuous drink. So what exactly do you see my part in this as? Speak not like I said I'd speak plain. So as Alex is calling Oig out a little bit, knowing that he's kind of flourishy and charming, and he's trying to say things without necessarily saying them, and that is Oig's character, and Alex doesn't necessarily vibe with that. So I come with a response here.
Damn desert dwellers.
Yep.
Can't get a straight answer out of them.
I like to talk size, talk out the side of their mouth.
I'm not well versed in Conan lore, but it's nice to be able to flavor things a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you don't necessarily have to be. We're not going to be super strict on Conan lore here. Where you're
Yeah.
like, no one's going to sit there and go, actually, in the third book, that wouldn't make
Oh,
sense because, like, if you start doing
yeah.
that, like, come on, dude, we're just trying to
Well,
have fun. But keep
yeah,
it in the
yeah, yeah.
same like flavor genre kind of thing. And if you do know a bit of Conan lore that you can toss in there, um, you serve someone from the Conan lore or just mentioning races from it. That's awesome and great and can really help immerse yourself in the RP. To make sure. So missed by a few characters there. So I responded saying, Oig laughs a bit as he said, Son of Zale, you are right at me, amigo. We are men after all. I will please speak plainly then. I want you to supply strong thralls for me to fight in the arena that people can challenge, and if I deem it necessary, supply said slave with a poisoned dagger or savage the opposing slave's armor to make sure the fight goes whichever way I wish it to. He finishes his sentence, raising his arms to the side with a shrug, and picks his ale up and sharpens his eyes in an attempt to read Alex's face as he drinks his ale. I messed up a little bit here, but so
That
perfect way to
it
kind of
happens.
correct it. Yep, reads read Alex's face as he sips from his ale. So you can just kind of put a little correction in there and just be like, hey, this is what I really meant to say. Because I missed some words in the continuance thing, but basically realizing like this guy's not going to listen to me if I keep up with this kind of fancy talk, so I'll speak very plainly. Here's what I want. Here's what I want you to be able to do. Um, and here's the kind of the shady part of what I want to do. So it's not all business. There's a little bit of dark things kind of going on in the background, um, uh, as well as making sure. One of the things that I've established in Oeg's backstory is that he's very observant. While he may not necessarily be, he is smart, but he's not necessarily like some sort of super genius or anything. But the big thing he's able to do is he's really good at paying attention to what's going on. In his backstory, the way that he learns the drug trade is by sitting in an alley and um, watching the drug dealer across the street, seeing who his customers are, seeing where he gets his supplies, seeing how they make it. So it's all very observant. So a lot of times, as flavor for my character, I will put in that things that another character might notice, like I sharpen my eyes, I kind of squint a little bit, and I'm really looking at your face, trying to see how you react, to see if I can get a read on how you're receiving the words that I'm saying. Um, Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that Oeg is able to read everything that happens. He's able to read their mind all of a sudden, or like know exactly how they reacted to something. But I want to give it as a signal that my character is doing something, clearly studying your character, for signs of a reaction, anything to kind of give you away, give away your inner thoughts or your things. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier with the giving, is that you will notice if you saw someone suddenly looking at you really intently, or like staring at your eyes or staring at your face when they're talking normally beforehand. After they ask you a question and they just start, glaring you down. So that gives Alex's character a chance to react, and maybe he, goes stone faced, just like, I'm not going to give anything away. Maybe he doesn't care, and he's like, I, I'm not going to hide any of my feelings about this because I'm kind of putting them plainly on the table for you. So there's nothing extra to find with what I'm doing. But that's the give to say, hey, here's what I'm putting down for you to be able to pick up on. While we're doing this, if any of you guys who are sitting here want to ask questions, just go and put them in the local chat, and we'll kind of answer them as we go along. Alex takes a long moment in silence. His bottom lip pushes out slightly and he nods. A smile breaks across his face and he roars out a deep guttural laugh. Done. He points to Oig and snatches a chunk of bread, tearing it to his teeth. Still laughing. You are a true dweller of the deserts, filled with venom and dangerous. I like that. He calms and swallows the bread, continuing, yes, this is easily done. This is good, in Oig's mind. Alex has accepted it, and he even kind of feels like he's won a bit of favor with Alex. Like he's like, oh, he likes the kind of person that I am, which is something that he'll keep in mind later on, knowing like if I have more business ventures, if there are things going on, or even if I do something else, because Oig is a bit schemy, he might think to himself, if I kind of mess with Alex's stuff later on, then deny it, I've won some favor, and maybe he'll believe me.
Mm-hmm. You come over here punching me.
Just coming and attacking. Yeah, that happens too, and that's what we talk about, just because something happens with your character, like suddenly someone may start punching, because we all misclick, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not like, oh, I decided to sucker punch you all of a sudden.
No.
If you want to be, you can, but make it make sense. Like, don't just be like, we're having this pleasant conversation. Man, I like you a lot. You're great. And then I decide to sucker punch you. Like, make it make sense.
Now, if you want to, I know, oh gosh, I'm terrible with names. Jaina had mentioned something about, like more, like combat type role play or aggressive role play. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to, we can kind of fade out here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of a nice little closing, and then go in and just show an example of that. Mm-hmm. And like, I'll just change the reaction. I'll basically pick up where instead of nodding and saying done, it'll be like an alternate version.
Yeah. I think that'd be perfect. And that's something that you guys can do here to, like, if you feel like the scene's over, and you're like, I don't really want to, like, I feel like this is a good conclusion to it, and you feel like you're kind of done with the scene, you can go in there and out of character and just type in FTB, or type in with the parentheses FTB question mark, just saying like, hey, are you good with ending the scene here? Because the other person may have, even though you feel like it's a logical ending, the other person may have something they want to bring up. So for example, I might have been like, oh great, let's toast to our new partnership. But Alex may have been like, oh, hold on, I've got one more thing. And he may come back and be like, he may have, on one condition or something along those lines that he wants to add in. But yeah, let's pick it up where I put the offer out there, and Zalex has an adverse reaction to my offer. Preemptively, time to put a sword in Oeg's inventory at Oeg's hotbar. Something to keep in mind in a hostile scene too is that we do have PvP turned off by default on the server, and we have player versus planner. Oh, no worries, Hannah. It is fade to black, basically meaning that you want to end the scene. You're ready to end the scene. Anyway, what I was saying is that because we have PvP off, and we have very little character versus character damage, you won't actually be able to fight the other person necessarily in a hostile scene if you want to.
Right.
So you will have to RP that out, or you can even, if you do actually want to PvP that person, you can tell the other character, let's take this to the arena in character, and then you can both warp arena. And within the arena, there's a little if you haven't been there yet, this is huge coliseum with seats along the sides of it, but in the center there's a ring, and if you hop into that ring, it gives you the option to enter into PvP. There's a yes, no, always, and never option, so you can both go in there, press yes, and then actually duke it out if you want to do it that way instead of doing it through RP through text.
Yeah, I'm an RPer, so I'm not going to PvP much, but so this is an example, and this is kind of like the example I was saying earlier.
Zalex stops and thinks for a long moment. His eyes narrow, his lips begin visibly quivering. With a roar, he explodes into motion, leaping to his feet and flipping the table. His body is a blur, far more agile than his size would imply. In the blink of an eye, he is standing before Oig, an axe covered in rime and frost in his hand. You dare try to insult my honor with lies and snake tongue. He swings his axe, attempting to sink it deeply into Oig's chest.
Obviously,
Yeah.
I can't just hit him, and I can't kill him. So what I've done is I've given him now the opportunity to react, and vice versa. Now, if he wants to get cut, if he wants to get sliced open, that's his choice. If he even wants to die, that could be his choice. Although this would be a silly time to do it.
Yeah.
But this gives now the other person that you're playing with the chance to create as well.
Yeah. So there will be scenes where you do want the character to die. It would make sense. It's possible that you thought up a different character and you kind of want to introduce that instead, so you feel like it's time for the death of your character. I will say that deaths of player characters can be truly epic moments.
Yes.
So I would say take the time, set it up, work it out with someone else out of character how you want to die exactly. And then play the scene out so that you can have a good exit for your character that makes sense, and then hopefully can continue on story-wise. For example, if I were to let Zalex kill me right now, Katarina would probably have a problem with that, and she'd probably come to take revenge on Zalex for that. The same way as if you murder someone of a clan, their clan may have an issue with your clan then and decide to come after you. So have a good story around it, have a good way that they go out. By no means do you have to kill your character if you're done with them. You can just kind of get rid of them and just come up with some like they got sick of being in the exiled lands and decided to take their bracelet off and end things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, after a player death, you do make a new name and a new backstory. If you're what we call canon, like in character, your player dies, you want them to be removed from the story. So don't come back with the same character. That character's done now, and you want to go out and make a new character, make a new backstory.
And by all means, if you want to make a new character, you don't have to die. You could just fade off and
Yeah.
wander off into the exiled lands and
Exactly.
no one ever sees you again.
Yep, just wandering off into nothingness and forever. I will say, like, don't try to create new characters too often, because it can get
Mm-mm.
confusing for people who you are, and it'll be hard for them to RP with you. If you're constantly making new characters or changing your character, it's hard for people to continue a story with you, because they really don't know who you are, what you're doing. And I will say that everyone's here to have fun. Everyone's here to, like, after work or after school or whatever's going on in your normal life, to come in here and have fun. They're not going to be going through every single person's backstory. And if you've written 17 backstories in the past month, they're probably
Yeah,
not going to want to keep up with it and RP with you.
yeah. And you're not going to role play with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find a kind of 2 or 3 people that you guys click really well, and you have great time, and that's going to be kind of like become your partners. If you sat and tried to spend, hours role playing with every single person on here, you'd never go back to the same person twice. You wouldn't have time.
So RP wise, as far as like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not great with the emotes. Not a lot of people really aren't. We may get out of the chair and bring the swords out, just showing, like, hey, I'm here and I'm ready to fight, kind of thing. Just for the immersion of it, but by no means is it necessary to do all that. If you're not very good with it, sometimes just like you have to dedicate all your brain power, all your CPU to just doing the text part of it. So don't feel like you need to do it, but you always can if you want to kind of immerse yourself a bit more. So this is something too that I was talking about before. We want to do a hostile scene, obviously, but it is possible that Oig could have dodged it and just kept trying to sweet talk his way out of this thing.
Sure.
And be like, oh, no, my friend, you're misunderstanding. I don't tell lies or something like that. But because we're doing a hostile RP scene in the same way, Oig is normally this very, like, warm, kind of charming person. Even there's he's a bit of a snake and there's a little bit of venom to his words. So you can't always completely trust him. This is a very big change from Oig, where he gets hard and he gets mean and he gets cold. So this is him having a very visceral reaction to what's occurring, and once again something that's out of character for this character. Him showing the clear intent that I am here. I am more than willing to fuck you up if it comes down to that. Ha ha ha, oh, it gets hard, yeah. It's pretty good, actually. Damn it. yeah, I'm not always good with the words sometimes. I'm just kidding. I know words. I know words real good. All right.
I knew words better than anybody. Trust
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I basically made words. I made them up. I even know the word for making words up. Yeah, I know it. I'm not gonna tell you because then you would know, but I know it. Inventing. Boom, I did it.
I want to take a little bit of liberty here. Something we haven't discussed, but you'll see what it is.
Sure.
In a second.
And if you ever want to do something that you guys haven't necessarily discussed in the roleplay, you can go ahead and toss it out there and leave it up to the other person to say like, yo, hey, don't like that, let's not do that. And you guys can retcon it, just kind of rewind it so that that doesn't happen. Or if you're feeling uncomfortable or the other person's feeling uncomfortable, they can say fade to black, or hey, let's pretend this didn't happen, and just kind of let's just kind of pretend that none of this occurred, because I wasn't really comfortable with that scene.
Shit, I ran out of text.
Yeah, don't worry, I've done that several times this time. So something to point out is that me and Alex have done a lot of RP, so we have a lot of description and we have a lot of this because we've got a lot of experience doing it. By no means do you have to be this wordy about it. This is just to give you some ideas. Like I said, being able to RP with other people who've RP'd a lot, you'll be able to get a lot of idea of what's happening during the scene. So he says Alex rolls away with a little flip, standing ready and snarling, almost more animal than man at this point. You are shit in my eyes. I knew from the moment venom sprayed from your lips that you are nothing to me. He circles, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet. You speak of honor, you don't know the meaning of the word Softlander. As he is about to move, a gruff shout erupts from the side. Rory and Bray are there, armed and watching. Say, Alex, I know not what you've been drinking, but not here. So this is good. This is actually involving some of the NPCs from the scene.
Right, and it gives us an out.
Yeah, and it gives us a way to kind of like end the scene.
Right, and nobody looks weak. Nobody loses face. And he can now back out and say, "I'll see you soon," or whatever, and that way nobody loses face.
Yep.
Nobody has to submit to the other, so to speak.
Exactly.
And no, I don't think it's not a lot of work, Sienna. It's once you get into the habit of it, it's like anything else. It just becomes a habit. I don't know. I guess it can be work at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't need to be this much. Like this is one-on-one, 2 experienced RPers. We have a lot that we can say. You can have much shorter RPs. You don't have to be this descriptive about everything you're doing. You can just say like, oh, I stood up, or I sat down, or I smiled and then said this. This is, just to give you an idea of things that you can say if you want to kind of advance it. There's nothing wrong with even just using dialogue for the most part.
Right.
If you just want to say what you're saying or like little actions that you take, that's totally fine. This is just to give you an idea of things that you can say or you can do. If you want to, kind of make it a bit more intense, up your RP, anything like that.
Just practice. If it's something, and honestly, if it's something you find you don't enjoy, then shit, don't do it. Do it your way where you have fun.
Yep.
That's kind of rule number 1, I think.
Exactly.
I personally, I don't think there is any messing up. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's safe to say. I mean, role play is like
Yeah.
sex. Some is better than others, but it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no messing up. If you ever want like feedback about things you could do, I'm sure everyone there would be like, "Oh, it'd be really cool if you talked about this more, if you said this, or if you had expanded on you doing this." But overall, we're just here to have fun, so don't feel like there's a right or a wrong way what you're gonna do. So another example of actions that you're actually taking in game, I'm saying that I sheathe my sword. I laughed a bit, and then I'm going to walk out. So if you want to walk, all you have to do is press backspace while you're not in the actual chat, and I can actually take my character and walk off screen. I can do that right now, but
Yeah.
one thing that I would say is if you do that, just go around the corner. Don't actually leave the area, so that if they have something
Mm-hmm.
that they want to shout to you as you're leaving, that they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always kind of exit like this, very very short.
Yeah. And Katarina makes a good point. Unless someone is asking for feedback and help, don't just critique the RP.
No.
Don't talk crap about people and be like, "Oh, don't RP with that person because they're not good" or something like that. Just let people enjoy, let them participate, have fun, and don't say anything that isn't kind. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You want it to be a part of the learning. You want, the more you honestly, the best way to learn is just by doing it and being around people. The more you get used to it, the more you'll come out of your shell. You'll feel good about doing it. You'll know what you want to do. You'll know what your character is. You'll know what your character wants to do, and you'll kind of get it done. So, yeah, as Alex moves eggs and leaves and less stops. So we've essentially just both kind of given a signal to each other like, hey, we're ending the scene here.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of character, usually just to be like a nice little thing, I usually go in there and type something with the parentheses.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of signaling and confirming like, hey, I am done with the scene, but I had a good time. Let's do it again sometime. Um, and just showing that you're out of character now and that things went well. Or you can even shut up, Alex. Said no, I really don't like you.
Yeah.
But but just signal like what was going on, or if you want to talk about the scene at that point, you can and be like, "Oh, I loved it when you did this," or "It was cool when you
Right.
did that," or "Hey, your character did this, and I was a little bit confused. Can you explain what exactly they were doing?" Or even setting it up for future things of like, "I would love for this to continue on, where X, Y, and Z happens later on, and we can RP that out."
Yep.
But yeah, that's exactly right, Sienna. That's practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be, the better you'll do. And of course, if you ever want help, if you ever want to practice, if you ever want to get some critiques or some advice, please, contact me, contact Katarina, contact Alex. Let us know, and we'll be happy to do one-on-one RP with you, so you can practice, and we can
Mm-hmm.
give you little tidbits of advice as we do it. See if anyone else has any questions, and then we'll end the recording if not. All right, I think that's good. Like I said, if you guys need anything else or have any other questions, please come find us in game. DM me on Discord, whisper me in game, toss out on global chat and say, "Oh, can you come swing by and talk to me for a sec?" We'll be happy to do it.